Welcome to our deep dive, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at how software development has changed over the years.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how we've gone from these like old siloed approaches.
Right, like
Really?
completely separate teams, barely even talking to each other.
Exactly, to these like streamlined methodologies, that power like all the apps and services we use every day.
It's true. I mean, remember back in the day when, you'd be waiting weeks
Yeah.
or even months for a software update?
Oh yeah, totally.
Now it's like we get updates
Daily,
hourly even.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible.
It is, and what's really interesting is how this whole shift towards like rapid, reliable releases, it was really driven by a fundamental change in how like dev and ops teams work together. Think back not that long ago, these teams were practically at war.
Oh, yeah.
Each like blaming the other for delays and problems.
Oh, I've heard stories about the throwing code over the wall mentality.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a classic.
It sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Oh, for sure.
Not to mention serious developer burnout.
Totally. Yeah.
So is that where DevOps comes in? Like a peace treaty between warring factions?
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
DevOps is all about tearing down those walls and fostering this culture of like collaboration and shared responsibility.
Right.
It's a pretty radical departure from that traditional like us versus them mindset.
Okay, so it's about collaboration, but how does that actually play out in the real world? Like, does everyone just sit in a giant room and code together?
Well, not quite. While co-location can help, DevOps is more about like aligning goals,
Right.
processes and tools across teams.
Okay.
So imagine like developers and operations folks like participating in each other's daily stand-up meetings,
Oh, interesting.
sharing on-call responsibilities, or even like pairing up to write code and deploy it together.
That's great.
Yeah,
That sounds like a huge cultural shift.
it is a big shift.
But I can see how it would lead to a better understanding of each other's challenges and ultimately a more cohesive and efficient team.
Yeah.
So does this collaboration translate into tangible benefits, or is it just about feeling good and holding hands?
The benefits are definitely tangible.
Okay, good.
DevOps practices like continuous integration and continuous delivery
Okay.
allow teams to release updates much faster and more frequently.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon for organizations practicing DevOps to go from releasing software every few months to multiple times a day.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is pretty remarkable.
But it makes me wonder, with all this emphasis on speed,
Yeah.
how do you ensure that things don't break?
Right.
Doesn't moving fast increase the risk of errors and downtime?
That's a valid concern for sure. And that's where site reliability engineering, or SRE, comes in.
Okay.
SRE adds this layer of data-driven rigor
Oh,
on
big.
top of the DevOps foundation,
Right.
making reliability a quantifiable feature, not just a matter of luck.
Okay, so how do you go about measuring something as seemingly intangible as reliability?
Right.
Like, you can't just pull out a ruler
You can't.
and measure it.
Right. So that's where service level objectives, or SLOs, come into play.
Right.
SLOs set these concrete targets for things like uptime latency and error rates
Right.
based on user needs and business goals.
I see.
Think of it like this. You wouldn't build a bridge without first defining its load-bearing capacity.
Right.
Right. So SLOs are kind of like the load-bearing capacity for your software services.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
So you set these targets, but what happens if you miss them? Do you just shrug and say, oops?
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
SRE introduces the concept of error budgets.
Error budget.
Error budgets. Yeah. Imagine you have a certain amount of downtime or errors you can tolerate
Right.
before it starts impacting your users too much.
I see.
That's your error budget.
So if you blow through your error budget early in the month, that's a signal to slow down on new features.
Yeah.
And focus on improving reliability.
Exactly. It's a brilliant way to balance the desire for speed with the critical importance of stability.
Right.
It's about being proactive, not just reactive.
SRE sounds like a pretty demanding role.
It can be.
You need to be developer, an operations expert, and a data analyst all rolled into one.
That's true. SREs often come from diverse backgrounds and wear many hats.
Yeah.
They need a deep understanding of both technology and the business to effectively balance competing priorities.
This all makes sense for small, agile teams,
Yeah.
but I can imagine things getting complicated as an organization grows.
Right.
More teams,
Yeah.
more services, more complexity.
Yeah.
It sounds like a recipe for chaos.
You're anticipating the next stage perfectly. That's where platform engineering steps in to tame that complexity
Okay.
and streamline things for developers, especially as companies scale up.
Okay, tell me more about this magical solution called platform engineering.
Right.
Is it like building a one-size-fits-all toolbox for developers?
That's a good way to think about it. Platform engineering is about building something called an internal developer platform, or IDP.
IDP.
Imagine a self-service portal where developers can access everything they need to build, test, deploy, and run their applications, all without needing to understand the intricacies of the underlying infrastructure.
So it's about abstracting away the complexities.
Yeah,
And providing developers with pre-built, standardized building blocks.
exactly.
That sounds like it could save a lot of time and headaches.
For sure.
This has been incredibly illuminating so far.
Right.
We've gone from walled-off kingdoms to this integrated, streamlined ecosystem.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
But before we get too deep into platform engineering,
Yeah.
I want to make sure we're all on the same page about how these approaches actually work together.
That's a great point.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly,
Yeah.
DevOps lays the groundwork by establishing this culture of collaboration and continuous delivery.
Right.
It's like setting the stage for everything else.
Precisely. Then SRE comes in to define the quality standards, ensuring that everything built on that foundation is reliable and meets those crucial performance targets.
Right.
They're like the quality control inspectors, making sure the building is up to code.
Okay, and finally, platform engineering swoops in with the tools and infrastructure,
Right.
making it all scalable and manageable even as the organization grows.
Exactly.
They're the ones providing the scaffolding and heavy machinery to make construction efficient and safe.
That's an excellent way to put it. Each approach plays a vital role in creating a more efficient, reliable, and ultimately more successful software development process.
That's fantastic. This has been a fascinating journey so far.
Yeah, it has.
We've gone from walled-off kingdoms to streamlined, data-driven ecosystems.
That's right.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the future of this space.
That's an excellent question, and one that I think will lead us nicely into the next part of our discussion.
Oh, perfect.
What we've seen so far is really just the beginning.
Okay, I'm hooked.
Listeners, stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore some of the emerging trends shaping the future of software development and what they mean for the apps and services you use every day.
Welcome back to our deep dive in part 1. We journeyed from the throw-it-over-the-wall days to the collaborative world of DevOps, SRE, and platform engineering.
Yeah.
But the story doesn't end there, does it?
Not even close. The software development world is like a constantly evolving ecosystem.
Right.
New challenges and opportunities emerge all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest game changers on the horizon, I think, is artificial intelligence.
AI is everywhere these days, from self-driving cars to personalized recommendations on our favorite streaming services.
Oh, yeah. It's everywhere.
It is.
It's ubiquitous.
But to be honest, I haven't given much thought to how AI is impacting the world of software development.
Well, get ready to have your mind blown.
Yeah.
AI and machine learning are starting to revolutionize how software is built, tested, and even how it runs.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So how exactly is AI changing the game? Is it all about automation, like robots taking over coding jobs?
Automation is definitely a big part of it.
Okay.
Imagine AI-powered tools that can sift through mountains of code,
Right.
identify potential bugs and vulnerabilities, and even suggest fixes.
Whoa.
That's already happening.
That's both impressive and a little terrifying.
Right.
It makes me think of those sci-fi movies where robots become self-aware and take over the world.
I know, it's a common fear.
But on a more practical level, how does this AI-powered automation actually benefit developers and the software they create?
Well, the benefits are huge.
Right.
By automating those kind of repetitive and time-consuming tasks.
Right.
AI frees up developers to focus on the more creative and strategic aspects of software development.
Uh-huh.
Imagine having more time to design elegant solutions.
Right.
Think about the user experience and innovate instead of getting bogged down in mundane tasks.
That sounds like a dream come true for developers.
It is a pretty amazing time to be a developer.
But it also makes me wonder how this impacts the role of SREs.
Yeah.
If AI is constantly monitoring and fixing things, does that mean SREs become obsolete?
That's a great question. While AI can definitely augment SREs,
Right.
It's unlikely to replace them entirely.
Oh.
Think of it this way.
Uh-huh.
AI can be a powerful tool for detecting anomalies and potential problems.
Right.
But it takes human expertise to interpret those signals,
Okay.
make informed decisions,
Right.
and implement those complex solutions.
So SREs become more like conductors,
Yeah.
orchestrating a symphony of AI-powered tools and human expertise to ensure reliability.
That's a beautiful analogy. SREs will need to become experts in AI and ML themselves,
Right.
understanding how these systems work their limitations and how to best integrate them into their reliability strategies.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not about replacing humans, but
Yeah.
about empowering them to do their jobs even better.
Exactly.
So we've talked about automation.
But what other ways is AI impacting software development?
One area that's particularly exciting is the development of more intelligent and adaptive software.
Okay.
Imagine software that can learn from user behavior, personalize experiences,
Uh-huh.
and even anticipate and resolve problems before they occur.
That sounds incredible.
It's pretty amazing stuff.
It's like the software becomes a partner working alongside us to achieve our goals.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way to think about it.
But I also wonder about the potential downsides.
Right.
How do we ensure that these AI-powered systems are reliable, unbiased, and trustworthy?
That's a crucial question.
Yeah.
And one that the entire software development community is grappling with.
Right.
As we become more reliant on AI,
Yeah.
we need to develop new approaches to testing, monitoring, and managing these systems
Right.
to ensure they behave as intended
Right.
and don't introduce new risks.
So it's not just about building cool new AI-powered features. It's about building them responsibly and ethically.
You're sure? It seems like the role of SREs becomes even more critical in this context.
Absolutely. SREs will play a key role in defining and enforcing the standards for AI reliability and safety.
Okay.
They'll need to work closely with data scientists, AI specialists, and ethicists to ensure that AI systems are built with transparency, fairness, and accountability in mind.
This all sounds incredibly exciting, but also a bit daunting.
It is a lot to take in.
It seems like the skills required to be successful in software development are constantly evolving.
That's true. The days of specializing in a single narrow domain are over.
Right.
The most successful software development teams will be those that embrace a multidisciplinary approach, bringing together experts from diverse backgrounds to solve complex problems.
This idea of collaboration seems to be a recurring theme in our discussion.
Yeah, and it is.
First, it was about breaking down silos between development and operations.
Right.
And now it's about collaborating across even more disciplines, including AI and data science.
You've hit on a key insight. Collaboration is the foundation of innovation in software development.
Okay.
And it's only becoming more important as the industry evolves.
Right.
And speaking of collaboration, there's another trend that's reshaping the software development landscape,
Yeah.
and that's the rise of open source software.
Open source has been around for a while, but it seems to be gaining even more momentum lately. Why is that?
Yeah, it definitely seems to be having a resurgence.
Yeah.
Open source offers several advantages.
Okay.
Firstly, it allows developers to build upon each other's work instead of constantly reinventing the wheel.
Right.
This not only accelerates innovation,
Right.
but also leads to more robust and secure software as it's constantly being reviewed and improved by a global community of developers.
That makes sense. It's like the collective wisdom of the crowd being harnessed to create something greater than any one individual could achieve alone.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But aren't there risks associated with open source? What about security vulnerabilities or malicious code being intentionally introduced?
Those are valid concerns. It's essential to have robust security practices in place when using open source software,
Right.
including carefully vetting any third-party components
Uh-huh.
and staying up to date on security patches and updates.
So it's like anything else in life, there are trade-offs to consider.
Yeah, for sure.
But it sounds like the benefits of open source, especially in terms of speed and innovation, are hard to ignore.
Absolutely. Open source is becoming increasingly integrated into every aspect of software development, from the operating systems we use to the tools and frameworks we rely on, and this trend is only going to accelerate in the future.
This has been a fascinating exploration of the evolving landscape of software development.
Yeah, it has been a good conversation.
We've gone from robots taking over coding jobs to the power of collective intelligence in open source.
We covered a lot of ground.
But I have to admit, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this change.
I can understand that it's a lot to take in.
For organizations trying to stay ahead of the curve, what practical steps can they take to navigate this rapidly changing world?
That's a great question, and one that I think will lead us nicely into the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, great.
Stay tuned, listeners, because in part 3, we'll explore some practical tips and strategies for building a future-proof software development organization.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the future of software development. So far, we've journeyed from the days of siloed teams to the rise of AI-powered tools and the power of open source. It's been quite a ride.
It has, but now let's shift gears and get practical.
Yep.
If you're an organization trying to not just survive, but thrive in this rapidly changing landscape, where do you even begin?
That's the million-dollar question. It feels like the rulebook is constantly being rewritten. What concrete steps can organizations take to future-proof their software development practices?
Well, the first and most crucial step is to cultivate a culture of continuous learning and experimentation. The tech world moves at lightning speed, so complacency is not an option.
So it's not enough to just learn a skill and consider yourself done.
Right.
It's about embracing lifelong learning.
Yes.
And staying curious.
Exactly. Encourage your teams to stay updated on the latest technologies and trends. Provide opportunities for professional development workshops, conferences, anything that keeps those learning muscles flexed.
I love that. It's about fostering a growth mindset throughout the organization.
For sure.
But learning is only part of the equation, right?
Yeah.
At some point, you have to put that knowledge into action.
Absolutely. And that's where experimentation comes in.
Okay.
Create a safe space for your teams to try new things, to experiment with different tools and technologies, and yes, even to fail occasionally.
Failing occasionally? That doesn't sound very safe.
Well, I wouldn't encourage reckless risk-taking, but controlled experimentation means accepting that not every idea will be a home run. Sometimes you learn the most valuable lessons from the things that don't work out.
That's a great point. It's about shifting the perspective from failure being a negative to being a valuable learning opportunity.
Exactly.
So we've talked about learning and experimenting, but are there any specific areas where organizations should be focusing their efforts?
One area that's becoming increasingly critical is automation. We've already touched upon how AI can automate tasks like code testing and bug detection.
Right.
But the potential for automation extends far beyond that.
So it's not just about robots writing code, but about automating all sorts of tasks across the entire software development lifecycle.
Exactly. Think about automating things like infrastructure provisioning, code deployment, and even some aspects of system monitoring and maintenance. This frees up your teams to focus on higher value activities that require human ingenuity and creativity.
It sounds like automation is not just a nice to have, but a necessity for organizations looking to stay competitive.
I think so.
But with all this talk about efficiency and speed, we can't forget about security.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. Security is paramount, especially as software becomes more complex and interconnected. It's not something you can just bolt on at the end. It needs to be baked into the entire development process from day one.
So it's about shifting left on security, integrating it into every stage of the development lifecycle, rather than treating it as an afterthought.
Precisely. This means implementing secure coding practices, using robust testing tools to identify vulnerabilities early on, and fostering a culture of security awareness throughout the organization.
A culture of security awareness. What does that look like in practice?
It means ensuring that everyone on the team, from developers to project managers, understands their role in protecting sensitive data and systems. It's about ongoing training, open communication, and making security everyone's responsibility.
That makes sense. It's like the old saying, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Security is everyone's job. So we've talked about continuous learning, embracing automation, and prioritizing security. Are there any other key ingredients for building a future-proof software development organization?
One more that's absolutely essential is collaboration. Breaking down silos between teams is no longer a nice-to-have. It's a necessity for success in today's fast-paced world.
We've talked a lot about collaboration throughout this deep dive, from DevOps breaking down the wall between development and operations to the need for multidisciplinary teams in the age of AI. It seems like collaboration is a recurring theme.
It is, and that's because it's fundamental to how we solve problems and innovate, encourage cross-functional collaboration between developers, operations, SREs, security professionals, and anyone else involved in the software development lifecycle.
So it's about building bridges between different departments and fostering a shared understanding of the challenges and goals across the organization.
Exactly. When everyone feels responsible for the success of the product, the entire organization benefits.
This has been an incredibly insightful journey exploring the past, present, and future of software development. We've covered a lot of ground from the early days of siloed teams to the rise of AI and the importance of a positive developer experience. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
I agree. The future of software development is both exciting and full of challenges. By embracing a culture of continuous learning, investing in automation, prioritizing security, fostering collaboration, and empowering developers, organizations can navigate this ever-changing landscape and build a brighter future for themselves and their users.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep innovating and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with software.